The First Lady of the United States does not live with the President. Let that sink in. While Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office, Melania Trump is in New York City. Not the White House, not Mar-a-Lago, New York. And she has her own apartment in Trump Tower, with only her name on it. This is not a rumor. This is not a tabloid story. This is now a matter of federal court filings, signed legal declarations, and a lawsuit that Melania Trump's own lawyers have turned into a ticking time bomb. A bomb they built themselves, and it is going off right now. Here is the question that is tearing through legal and political circles right now. How does the First Lady of the United States end up in federal court, fighting to prove where she lives? And how does that fight accidentally expose the most private details of her marriage? The answer starts with a billion-dollar demand letter a journalist named Michael Wolff, and one of the most spectacular legal backfires in recent political history. Melania Trump's team sent Wolff a letter demanding $1 billion. They accused him of defamation. They claimed his reporting about Melania, Donald Trump, and Jeffrey Epstein was false and damaging. They wanted an apology, they wanted money, or they would sue. Wolff did not back down. He sued first, and in doing so, he handed Melania's legal team a shovel, and they have been digging ever since. Michael Wolff filed for a declaratory judgment in New York State Supreme Court. He wanted a judge to declare that nothing he reported was defamatory, that it was either true or protected under the First Amendment rights afforded to journalists. That was his opening move. Melania did not want the case in New York. Her lawyers filed a notice of removal, a legal maneuver to transfer the case from New York State Court into federal court. The strategy was clear. Get it to federal court, then try to move it down to Florida. And if they could get it in front of Judge Aileen Cannon, Donald Trump's preferred judge in the Southern District of Florida, they might get it dismissed entirely. That was the plan. But here is where it all started to unravel. To move a case to federal court based on what lawyers call diversity jurisdiction, meaning the two parties live in different states, you have to prove that the parties actually do live in different states. Melania's team claimed she was a Florida resident. She lives at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, that her driver's license is in Florida, that she votes in Florida, that Florida is her legal home. Michael Wolff's legal team said, "Prove it." And the moment that challenge was issued, a can of worms opened so wide that it may never fully close, because federal case law is clear. If the opposing side presents credible, colorable evidence that someone does not actually live where they claim, the court must allow limited discovery on the issue of residency. That means depositions. That means document requests. That means Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States, could be compelled to answer questions under oath about where she sleeps at night. The judge assigned to the case is Judge BOMBSHELL, a Trump-appointed judge in the Southern District of New York. One of very few in that district, and even she could not simply take Melania at her word. The evidence Michael Wolff's team presented was too substantial to ignore. So what did that evidence look like? Wolff's lawyers filed a declaration laying out, page by page, connection by connection, just how deeply rooted Melania Trump is in New York City. And what emerged was not just a legal argument, it was a portrait of a woman who never really left New York, and never intended to. Start with this. Melania Trump arrived in New York City on August 27, 1996, on a B1/B2 visa. According to the filing, New York has been, and I am quoting directly from the legal document, continuous, systemic, and central to her life ever since. That is not editorial commentary. That is what her own opposing counsel put into a federal court filing, and the details that follow are extraordinary. Melania Trump owns her own apartment in Trump Tower, not the famous 66th-floor penthouse triplex that the Trump family shares, the one that appeared in the fraud case, a separate apartment, her own. Unit 33, H 33rd floor, purchased in 2016, held through a limited liability company called 72133 Holdings LLC, active, authorized in New York, and Donald Trump's name is not on it. Think about what that means. The First Lady of the United States bought her own apartment in 2016, the same year her husband won the presidency, and she put it in an LLC with only her name attached. That is not the act of someone who planned to make Florida their permanent home. That is the act of someone making sure they always have a place to go. And she uses it. The doorman at Trump Tower confirmed to investigators that Mrs. Trump does indeed live there. The filing also references her Netflix documentary, in which Melania is shown not at Mar-a-Lago, but seated at a large gilded desk in the 66th floor penthouse at Trump Tower, her Trump Tower living room, captured on film, presented to the world as her home. But wait, that is not even close to the most revealing part. Her son, Barron Trump, is an undergraduate student at NYU, New York University, in New York City. The filing notes that Melania has been openly vocal about making Barron a priority in her life, especially in the legal document's own careful phrasing, because Donald Trump is more occupied elsewhere with other matters. Read that line again. Her own legal filing, written by her own opposing counsel using facts drawn from public record and her own statements, describes her husband as occupied elsewhere with other matters. It is one of the most quietly devastating phrases in any court document in recent memory. Her father, Victor Knobs, lives in New York. Her sister lives on the Upper East Side. Her publisher is in New York. Her stylist and fashion collaborator, Hervé Pierre, is in New York. Her personal assistants are employed through the Trump Organization in New York. Her hairdresser is in New York. Her makeup artist is in New York. Her interior decorator is in New York. Her event planner is in New York. Her senior advisors live in New York. Her immigration lawyer, who also handled her parents' immigration paperwork, is in New York. Her manicurist is in New York. Her dentist is in New York. Her doctors are in New York. Her financial advisors are in New York. Every single person who keeps her life running is in New York. And then there is this. On social media, Melania Trump herself wrote in 2024, "New York City has captivated my heart from the moment I arrived." And at a campaign rally at Madison Square Garden, she took the stage and said these words, "Good evening, New York City. Hello, Madison Square Garden, our hometown." Our hometown, not Mar-a-Lago, not Palm Beach, not Washington, D.C., New York. Here is the brutal irony at the heart of this entire story. Melania Trump and her lawyers launched this legal fight. They sent the billion-dollar demand letter. They threatened the lawsuit. They filed the motion to remove the case to federal court. Every single step that led to this moment was a choice made by her team, and in making those choices, they opened the door to exactly the kind of scrutiny they were trying to avoid, because in order to keep this case in federal court, Melania now has to prove she lives in Florida. And to prove she lives in Florida, she has to answer questions about her life, her home, her marriage, and her daily existence that no First Lady has ever been forced to answer in a court of law. Michael Wolff did not expose her living arrangements. Her own lawsuit did. The legal argument Wolff's team is now making is straightforward. Everything about Melania's claimed Florida residency, the driver's license, the voter registration, the Mar-a-Lago address, is an artifice, a legal fiction constructed to manipulate jurisdiction, to get the case to a friendlier court, to escape a New York judge and land before Aileen Cannon in Florida. And the judge now has to decide whether to allow full discovery into where Melania Trump actually lives, whether to let Wolff's lawyers depose witnesses, pull records, ask questions under oath. If that happens, the story of the Trump marriage, long the subject of whisper and speculation, becomes a matter of public court record. So where does this go from here? Judge Vokasil must now rule on whether limited discovery is appropriate, whether Wolff's team has presented enough credible evidence to justify a formal investigation into Melania's residency. Given the volume and specificity of what has already been filed, legal analysts believe that threshold has very likely been met. If discovery proceeds, Melania Trump faces a profound choice: continue fighting and risk having her private life laid bare in sworn testimony and subpoenaed documents, or withdraw the lawsuit entirely, abandoning the billion-dollar defamation claim and handing Wolf a public victory. Neither option is clean, and underneath all of it sits a story that Americans are only beginning to process. The First Lady owns her own apartment in Trump Tower. Her husband's name is not on it. She bought it in 2016. She is surrounded entirely by a New York life. Her family, her doctors, her advisors, her stylists, her son's college, and her own legal filings describe Donald Trump as occupied elsewhere with other matters. This is not a tabloid story anymore. This is a federal court proceeding, and the evidence is coming from signed legal declarations, documentary footage, public speeches, and social media posts made by Melania Trump herself. The lawsuit intended to protect her reputation. Instead, it has raised questions about her marriage that no one in the Trump world wanted asked in public, let alone answered under oath. This story is only getting started. The court ruling on discovery could come at any time, and when it does, everything could change. So here is what I want to know from you. Do you think Melania's team made a catastrophic legal mistake by filing this suit? And what do you think it says about the Trump marriage that the First Lady has owned her own separate apartment since 2016? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is the kind of story that deserves a real conversation. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button now, because the next development in this case could break at any moment, and you do not want to miss it.